Greetings one, greetings all. It's the 19th of December, so in case I don't see you around, a very Merry Christmas. May have seen you last night. I was out last night in town and a pint in every pub in Denbigh. I think that was a mistake. I haven't quite recovered yet. While I was out, I saw two friends, Gez and Craig, who came over to me and were good enough to talk to me. And I asked Gez what's, he watches some of my videos and whatever, and I said what he liked, and he said, well, he likes the ghost stories. So I thought as it's Christmas, we should have really a Christmas ghost stories, and I've actually been waiting for Christmas to arrive to relate this story, because it happened around about Christmas. And I have to go back to the year 1970, 1977, 1978, 77. Okay, lived in a nurse's home at that time. I was one of those young sort of gadabout town, the kids who are hanging around about town on town now. Well, I was sort of one of them, one of those types. We had, good firm friendships going on. We had certain areas of town where we used to go to, and in one particular night we were down Post Office Lane when a car pulls up, and we were by Post Office Lane. We'd actually been to what is now the Hope and Anchor. It was a yeoman at that time, Denbigh yeoman, and I was on that side of the road. Anyway, car pulls up and a lad jumps out and he says, what time is it, mate? Or something. So I looked at my watch and it was like, I don't know, 7:30 or whatever it was, getting dark. And suddenly they started kicking 7 shades of stuff out of me, because they were Rithing lads, and Rithing lads would come to Denbigh and pick on the insignificant, and we'd go there and pick on their sort of numpties. Anyway, as I was getting the stuff kicked out of me, all my friends had legged it, hadn't they? Which I'm very grateful. But I ended up in Lino's, and he gave me a nice warm cup of coffee and some sympathy. Anyway, to get back to the ghost story properly, I ended up full of cuts and bruises and what have you, and I ended up in the nurse's home, back in my room. And it's there where I met, for the first and only time, what I thought was a psychology student. That's what he said he was. He was dressed in an old-fashioned, like a check coat, really. He looked old-fashioned, because fashion when you're young is absolutely everything, isn't it? But this guy seemed to be out of fashion and looked very, very odd. But I put it down to him being a psychology student. He was Scottish. He was aged about, he was older than me, though he didn't treat me as if I was a youngster, because anyone a year, 2 years older than me was like, they treated me like as if I was a schoolboy, and I was an inferior. That's how it was in those days. Different today, I believe. We have more respect now for our elders and for our youngies as well. We also give them the respect that they deserve. Not quite the same in those days. When you were older, it set you apart from those below you, and we looked up to those who were maybe just 1 or 2 years older than us, and there was this sort of barrier between us. Anyway, this guy actually was quite happy to talk to me, engage me in conversation, and he actually showed me a book. He said that he had a very special book. Now, the nurse's home, it's been on Most Haunted recently, and it was sort of identified as one of the most haunted regions of the hospital. I can confirm that. Now then, we would when you go through the front door, glass front door, turn left and go all the way down, and to the right through the swing door is the kitchen area, and on the left is a television lounge, or was, and then at the back there is a small sitting room, a quiet room, where people would sometimes go and study. They'd use that as a quiet area, away from the hubbub, away from the television, away from discos even, because we used to have discos in that lounge. Happy days. He took me in there to show me his book, and it was a book by someone called Wilkie Collins. Wilkie Collins. Now, I knew of Wilkie Collins from school days, because we had a huge library, an old-fashioned library in my school, and it had all the classic writers from Victorian times. Dickens, yes, very famous Dickens was, but Wilkie Collins in his day was even more well read than Dickens. It was very, very popular. Probably introduced the horror story, the sort of adventure story, the exciting story. And some of his stuff now is starting to come out. Anyway, this lad said that he'd read a story by Wilkie Collins, and in it describes someone who disappeared in front of someone's eyes. I can't remember the story, the name of the story I should say, but I know the story intimately because he read out a chapter of the book. And he said for a psychology student it was an important chapter because it dealt with the mind and the power of the mind. You must now imagine that I'm sat myself in front of a grown-up, basically, who looks odd, dressed strangely, hair slightly too short for the era, sideburns, long sideburns, check jacket, breeches, boots, and he's quoting from a book that looks very old, very dusty, a sort of a faded blue cover, hardback cover on the book. He read the story of the man who disappeared, and he came to the part of the story where the man said to his friend, "If I say these words and turn round once, twice, 3 times, I will disappear." The story doesn't contain those words. Obviously, they would be much too dangerous to appear in the story for someone to try such a thing. But the psychology student, he came over to me and he showed me in ink, in written ink, which I presumed was his own work, the words that the person in the original story in Victorian times, within Wilkie Collins' story, the words he had used. And he said to me, "Peter, I will show you now the power of the mind." He repeated those words. He read them out. He read them out again. He smiled at me and he turned round once, twice, 3 times. And he disappeared before my eyes. Naturally, that created quite an effect on me. Was it a trick? Did he exist? Was it in my mind? Had it actually happened? All I can tell you is that I never ever saw or heard of that Scotsman again. I never saw him. The power of the mind, is very, very strong. I thought I would relay that to you. That is a Christmas story, true story, naturally. And on that happy note, I wish him and I wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Leave me a comment, leave me a rating, tell me what you like to hear, tell me if you are enjoying my stories.